did.
Nice.
You didn't fill, did you fill that yourself?
No.
Okay. No. Be crazy. It's beautiful.
There we go.
So we're recording.
All right, everybody, mic's on, please. All right, welcome everybody to the planning board meeting, Wednesday, January 15th. First item on our agenda is a roll call. Tonight we have Ashley Case, we've got Lisa Buck, myself, Phil Ruck, we've got Judd McIntosh, we got Michael Costello, we got Bob Baer, we got Krista Schwintzer. Next up is acceptance of the agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
We're good. Any additions, subtractions, comments? Nope. All those in favor? All right, next up, approval of the minutes of December 18th, 2024. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Good.
Second.
Second. Edits? Edits on the minutes, anybody?
I have a comment.
All right, fire away.
On page 3. Just after it says a waiver approval vote. It says Phil Ruck asked for a motion to approve the waiver. And we've had some other discussion in the middle. And by the time I got here, I no longer remembered what the waiver request was. And so I think it should say, request the waiver of section 18-168(5)D, so that we know what it is that we're waiving.
Makes sense to me. Got it? Nice. Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes with that correction or suggestion? Very good. Next up, we have new business this evening. We have 2 public hearings. First one is a preliminary major subdivision application of Orono Holdings LLC for a 19-lot residential subdivision located at 73 Martin Street, tax map 31, lot 2-29 in the medium density residential zoning district. Property is also located partially within the Aquifer Protection Overlay and the Resource Protection Shoreline Overlay. Just for those of you in the audience, we're going to request the applicant come up and talk to us about the project, but we have adopted a NOR policy a little while back now. But Isabel, our town planner, is going to provide us a summary, and then we'll ask the applicant for any comments, additions, clarifications. So Isabel, you're up.
All right. So this is, as was mentioned, a preliminary subdivision review for a 19-lot residential subdivision and associated roadways. It's actually a portion of this overall site that you're seeing on the screen. Just the sort of very front portion behind the Main Street properties there. I just want to clarify, just for your knowledge, because we don't go through preliminary subdivisions reviews that often. Preliminary subdivision review does require the board to make formal findings under our ordinance. That being said, this is sort of the first step. We still have to do final subdivision review. So you'll see in some of the comments that I'll make that this should be addressed in advance of final subdivision review. Our ordinance requires us to have a public hearing at preliminary as well. But I just wanted to note upfront that there may be some things that are that warrant some additional discussion, and that should be submitted in advance of any further review of this application. So this is sort of a zoomed in picture of the overall development area. So you can see that it's really that portion of the site behind the Main Street properties. This site was formerly a gravel pit and sort of construction area. The street that you're seeing coming down from Main Street was formerly an access drive to that site. So if you're driving by, you can almost see the outline of that on the site, sort of entering there from Main Street. They're proposing to sort of build out that roadway to our public street standards. And then they're also proposing a connection over to the private driveway, which they have an access easement over. It's the driveway that you would utilize to access Orono Brewing. It's that access drive that they're proposing to connect to. And that was based on the planning board's comment at their conceptual plan review that you would like to see some interconnection of this proposed subdivision. You'll remember that previous iterations of the plan had shown at one point a cul-de-sac or a hammerhead there at the end. So there are a number of issues that the board asked me to sort of provide some clarity on or provide a summary of. One of those is related to buffering and screening. Again, the board will remember that at our conceptual plan review, you had asked for a sort of 20-foot tree clearing buffer, an undisturbed buffer rather, on lots 1 through 10. Those are the lots that directly abut the Main Street properties. That has been added to the overall site plan. You can almost see it here. There's an arrow pointing out that limits of tree clearing. In terms of trees and natural resources, I just want to note that there's no portion of the site that's within a unique natural habitat determined by the Maine Natural Areas Program that has been identified as an area sensitive to archaeological or historic resources by the Maine Historic Preservation Commission. And there's no portion of the site that is within significant wildlife habitat areas, like habitat for species that are appearing on the official state or federal list of endangered or threatened species, any higher moderate value waterfowl and wading bird habitats, any nesting or feeding areas, no critical spawning or nursery areas, or any higher moderate value deer wintering areas. That's all from available mapping from Beginning with Habitat, which has shared that mapping with the town. The site is also not crossed by any known trails. That's based on available town GIS mapping. And the applicants have submitted, along with their application, a wetland delineation that was completed by Watershed Resource Consultants. They did a wetland delineation for the entirety of the site, so the larger portion of the site as well. And so you'll see that they have found that there is one non-significant potential vernal pool. They have also found 3 wetlands and 4 streams within the overall site. The wetlands area sort of related to this development is shown on the overall subdivision plan. There is no outside state permitting required, though I do just want to note that you'll see on the plan, if you're looking at lot number 6, that depending on where a potential building is placed on that lot, which we're not reviewing this evening, but will be something that the code enforcement officer will have to review, that might require some additional state permitting, whether that's a permit by rule or elsewhere. With regard to traffic, they have submitted information using the most recent edition of the Institute of Traffic Engineers Manual. This is related to classification 210, which is single-family detached housing. Based on the formulas provided by the Institute of Traffic Engineers, we can expect a total of 179 daily trips, so both entering and exiting the overall site, with about 15 in the AM peak hour and 19 in the PM peak hour, which is usually between 4 and 6 p.m. An MDOT traffic count was performed on this section of Main Street, which is Route 2, back in October of 2023. There are currently 10,858 daily trips, so entering and exiting on this section of the roadway, with about 799 in the peak hour, the 7 a.m. hour, and 974 peak hour trips in the 4 p.m. hour. The total daily trips projected as a result of this development will represent about a 1.6% increase in overall trips on this section of roadway, with a 1.9% increase in the AM peak hour and a 2% increase in the PM peak hour. Because of the number of peak hour trips anticipated, and you'll recall that if you're proposing more than, I believe it's 200 trips in the peak hour, you require a traffic movement permit from Maine DOT. Given that this is not even close to 200 in the peak hour, there is no requirement for a further permit from DOT. And then the actual reviewing standard here is that the proposed subdivision will not cause unreasonable highway or public road congestion or unsafe conditions with respect to the use of the highways or public roads that are existing or those that are proposed. And given the 2% or less overall projected increase in traffic, staff has found that this will not really cause unreasonable public road congestion. So with regards to roads and access, there are two minor streets proposed, and I'm using that term minor because that's the way that our ordinance describes it. So they're called Brookside Drive and Noble House Lane. The minor streets have a variety of standards that they need to meet. They're outlined in table 7.4 of our subdivision ordinance. So basically what this section is demonstrating is that those standards have been met. The streets are arranged so that Brookside Drive ends in about a 90-degree angle with Noble House. And the intention would be that any future street development, which is not contemplated with this application, but which, you know, there is additional land available for, would be extended from the end of Brookside Drive and that's in accordance with ordinance requirements. So minor streets need to, again, meet those requirements of table 7.4. In this case, the proposed right-of-way is 50 feet, which is the minimum requirement. The proposed travel way is 24 feet. There's a proposed shoulder width of, well, it's greater than 4.5 feet, which is the minimum by the ordinance. And then there's a 5-foot sidewalk that's provided along one side of both of the proposed streets, and that's in accordance with ordinance requirements. As I mentioned at the outset, the applicant does have an access easement over the adjacent private road or access drive, which they propose to connect to Noble House Lane in order to ensure multiple access routes into and out of the proposed development. That's both from recommendations of the 2014 comprehensive plan, which was adopted by the town and which is the plan that we're still working off of, and the requirements of section 18.210E1F. The subdivider has shown proposed road names. These have been revised from comments from the code enforcement officer. And I do just want to note that the code enforcement officer will ultimately be the one that ends up assigning the house numbers to individual lots as building permits are pulled. That would be our typical practice. So there's an ordinance standard in here that says the planning board needs to do that. That is no longer the case. There are also a number of waivers related to road design that we need to discuss, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So with regard to drainage and stormwater, I know the applicant's going to want to talk a little bit more about this, but the area proposed for development was a formal gravel extraction site that has been allowed to revegetate. There is a paved access road that was used to access the pit that's being reconstructed as Brookside Drive, as I mentioned. So currently stormwater flows east through on-site streams down towards the Penobscot River. The proposed development will include 1.13 acres of impervious surface, and I think the applicant will want to clarify that there is some existing impervious surface on the site as well, which is included in that number. And there is 0.75 acres of landscaping within the proposed right-of-way. The preliminary estimations for each lot show that upon full build-out, the subdivision will end up resulting in a total of 2.43 acres of impervious surface, driveways, homes, and garages, and 6.24 acres of total developed area, so lawns and other maintained vegetation. So post-development, the existing Main Street house lots, as well as the portion of the proposed development area, including Noble House Lane, will sort of drain towards the proposed wet pond that's located near the end of Brookside Drive. If you're looking at the overall subdivision plan, you'll see that there. The wet pond has been sized to meet current Maine DEP standards, including Chapter 500 and SLOTA requirements for the road and the lots within the proposed subdivision. And the wet pond has been placed sort of to utilize that natural grading pattern of the site. They have provided HydroCAD calculations, which is a requirement of our ordinance. Those have been provided for 2, 10, and 25-year storm events, showing that the post-development flows won't exceed the existing flows from the site in any scenario. So no impact is expected to downstream drainage facilities as a result of this development. And the applicant does expect to turn over maintenance of the stormwater management facilities to the town. So I do just want to note that for final subdivision review, we're going to need any easement boundaries that would be sort of expected for the town to be maintaining to be shown on the final subdivision plans, and will need draft easement language to the town so that the town attorney can review that. In terms of utilities, the proposal intends to utilize municipal hauling of trash and recycling. I reached out to Public Works. There's no known capacity constraints with our contractor, so the proposed subdivision will not cause an unreasonable burden on the municipality's ability to dispose of solid waste, which is the ordinance standard here. The proposal intends to connect to the public water system through an 8-inch water main through the existing 16-inch main available within Main Street. And a preliminary capacity to served email has been provided by the Orono VZ Water District back in February, and that's included in the meeting packet. And then I do want to note that they are proposing to connect into public sewer as well. So the town's WPCF has the capacity to serve the proposed development. They have noted some concern with the condition of the clay line within Margin Street. So we've come to an agreement with the applicants that the applicants will be responsible for paying an impact fee, which will be sort of in the amount of the replacement of one of the the manholes that's specifically serving this site. And that should be sufficient to prorate the applicant's portion of that impact to the sewer line per conversations with WPCF. So the town will either utilize that fee or could make the applicant pay for that and upgrade that at their expense. We haven't worked out those details yet, but we'll be taking in an amount sufficient to prorate the cost of it, their impact. Underground utilities are proposed here, most of which are within the street right of way. This is an update from my memo, which had noted that they are out of the proposed right of way. There is an ordinance standard that all utilities need to be outside of the paved area of the proposed street. The applicants have noted that they are not going to be able to accommodate that, and I think that they are going to speak to why. So I have explained to them that that will end up requiring a formal waiver request to you all, and you'll have to find that to be appropriate. But they'll speak more to their justification. So at this point, we do have a couple of requested waivers. One of them is to the waiver of the maximum grade requirements. Again, those are outlined in table 7.4. This is specific to Brookside Drive. So they're proposing a slope there at one point of 10.17%. That is larger than the 8% grade that's allowed by table 7.4. The applicants have indicated that they're requesting this waiver in order to minimize regrading that's directly adjacent to Johnny Mac Brook. This also better allows the project to comply with section 18210E1I17. And that's again with respect to limiting grading. So staff is in agreement that this waiver is justified. They've also requested a waiver, again, to sort of those technical road design standards. This is related to the back slope. The applicants have noted that the site is quite steep in some places. The roadside slope will not exceed 3-to-1 from the roadside to the bottom of the ditch, but the back slope will need to be 2-to-1 in order to reach the existing topography within a reasonable distance, and again, minimize the grading in that area. So the town's engineer had noted that she didn't have a technical concern with that waiver being granted. So staff is okay with that justification. There are also a number of items that have been determined to be not applicable, which are detailed in the applicant's cover letter and the corresponding checklist, and staff is in agreement with those items. So in terms of conditions, I've talked a lot, so I won't run through all of our standard conditions, but you're familiar with those. And then in terms of recommended conditions, these are sort of specific to things that we'll be anticipating of this applicant should they make it to a final review. So we want to note that the signage is to be reviewed by the code enforcement officer by section 18140. Oh, this is the other one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, give me one moment and I'll pull up the. Oh, Okay, so you should be seeing in just a moment the actual draft findings document that has been included in the meeting packet for this. So there's just the one standard condition, which is that just noting that the findings of fact are with regard to preliminary major subdivision review, and that this is not in favor of any final subdivision review or any resolution to that to further review that's required. And then there are a number of items that are required prior to final subdivision review, including an inspection and maintenance plan for the proposed stormwater management facilities, a long-term inspection and maintenance plan for those stormwater facilities, including the proposed assignment of responsibility for implementing the inspections and maintenance. The overall subdivision plan should be revised to show the easement boundaries that we discussed, and draft easement language to the town should be provided in a final subdivision submission. The code enforcement officer will be the one that's responsible for assigning house numbers to individual lots. And again, an easement to the town for any sewer connection. And that is all I have. But the applicant is available, applicant's representative is available to answer questions, and I believe the applicant himself is online as well.
Sounds good. I'm going to invite you to come up and tell us who you are and if you have anything to add to Isabel's presentation.
Easel was out of my classified, so. So these are all the same plans we have in front of you. I'm Amy Young from engineering.
Is your sound on? Yeah.
There we go. Is that better? I'm usually loud enough that the mic's not necessary all the time, but I understand it's being recorded. Well, I mean, Isabel pretty much hit on everything. One thing that's in her planner review memo that she didn't speak too much on that I know has been a concern of your review engineer for the town is the location of the sidewalk on Johnny Mac Brook. When I was here before, there were no sidewalks proposed, so obviously we've added those. She's having a kind of a concern about the sidewalk being on the Johnny Mac Brook side of Brookside Road. The reason we chose to put that there was for three reasons, four actually. There will be less grading necessary if we put the sidewalk on that side of the road, so less grading towards the brook and less, work needs to be done closer to the brook. There will be curbing, so that will prevent vehicles from, I wouldn't say it wouldn't prevent vehicles, but it will hinder vehicles from going down off that bank, off the side of the road. And also the curbing will redirect the stormwater from going into Johnny Mac Brook and help it go into the proposed pond that we are showing on the plan that will be right here. And then the other big thing I know that Isabel spoke about that I was going to touch on is the stormwater. So I know in her memo that it said there's 1.13 acres of impervious area, which normally would send you into a chapter 500 review. That is what's going to be created after as a total impervious area. That includes the 0.3 acres that's currently existing as part of Brookside Avenue. And there will actually only be a new 0.95 acres of impervious area associated with the road and the sidewalk. So we don't need to, well, we need to get a PBR, but we won't need to go to a chapter 500 for this. And one of the waivers, the additional waiver that we need to ask for would be the utilities not being located under the pavement, but within the right of way. We have electric, water, sewer, storm drain, and gas all located within the right of way. And there's just no way you're going to put all that in 10 feet of right of way on either side of the pavement so it kind of, the storm drain needs to be located within the roadway because that's where the catch basins are going to be. But otherwise, they kind of need to be all spaced out so that number one, there's enough room to work on them within the right of way. And number two, enough room to work on each of them individually without disturbing any of the other ones. So just, from our previous meeting, which I realized was last March, one of your concerns was Johnny Mac Brook. So we definitely took that into account when we were putting in the sidewalk. the driveway through Old, Orono Brewing, the 20-foot forested natural buffer and sidewalks on all the roads. And, one thing Scott pointed out while Isabel was, doing her presentation is the vernal pool was actually found not to be significant. So a follow-up, investigation has been done. So.
Very good. Thank you. So just for the audience, we're going to open this up for questions from the board, and then we'll allow for public comment when we open up that section of the public hearing. So first comments from everybody. I have a few. So I'm just curious on the slope of the roadway.
Yep.
So we talked about town staff was okay with that waiver going to 10%. What about public safety? Have they weighed in on that?
Yeah, so the reason that we have, those maximum grading requirements is because we live in Maine and roads that are fairly steep make it more difficult for you to get up those roads when it's fairly icy. I did talk to our town engineer about that, and she doesn't necessarily have any technical concerns.
Well, fire department.
Oh, fire department specifically, they haven't raised any concerns with respect to that item. They did review this application. We didn't have a specific conversation about that, but they've reviewed the entirety of it.
Yeah, we typically don't see roads as steep as this, so something that I haven't seen in a while. So I would like to confirm that fire department our public safety department is okay with that slope.
And if they have a concern about it, that's actually the existing slope of the road right now.
Yep.
Is 10.17%?
Yep.
But what's the distance of that?
It's less than 250 feet.
But it's most of the road then.
It's most of just this
Entry
portion of the road right
Right.
here. Yeah.
So with regard to the sidewalk, was your plan to have, you mentioned that a curbing,
Yeah.
so raised curb, so that was your rationale for not putting in a guardrail. So is that what you said?
Well, we didn't say anything about guardrail yet. I know it had been recommended by Mandy.
Yep.
We are still kind of going back and forth. The ultimate hope is that the vegetation will grow up on the outside of the sidewalk to kind of be that barrier, because I know Mandy's big concern is the pedestrian safety. If we're not against it, and if it's something that the town really needs or wants to see, just pointing out, you've got the whole Riverwalk down here with no guardrail. So there are some of the sides of that trail that are just as steep as the sides of this. So it's, it can be done if it's definitely something the town wants to see.
Yeah, so is the plan, so back to the roadway, you mentioned curbs, sidewalk, you're gonna have a little esplanade strip? Or is that sidewalk abut that curb right?
The sidewalk will be right on the curb. Just if there's any esplanade strip and that sidewalk goes out any further, you're gonna start grading into the bank of this brook, and putting the sidewalk on this side of the road is minimizing the grading just as much as possible.
So explain that you mentioned locating that sidewalk on that side of the road minimizes grading. I just want to understand, because I can see there's seems like a little bit of a ditch on that side where you're pointing on the right side, the opposite side of the street from where you intend to put that sidewalk. So I'm just curious, your comment was that locating one of the few reasons for putting the sidewalk where you have it was to minimize grading. So I just want to follow along.
So. Makes the best one. So PP1 is the planning profile of Brookside. And so you can see here, even with the sidewalk put on this side, you've only got grading maybe out another 5 or 6 feet over here. But if you put the sidewalk on this side, it's going to drag everything down, and you're going to have to put more ditching on the lower side. I didn't do any of the grading on this. That was something Scott had done. So I know they bounced the idea back and forth, but that's
Okay.
That seemed to be the better two choices of the two.
So with the sidewalk, it's, it's a tight site. You're looking at the stream protection zone.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, you've got it identified on the plan. I'm just looking at the sidewalk, anything you can do, and we talked about this the last time you were here. Protecting Johnny Mac Brook to the extent possible. But I just want to make sure that the TOA slope, you're not pushing against that stream protection zone, are you, from the sidewalk? I haven't seen the grading along that section of road, but it's pretty tight up toward
I think right,
Route 2.
right here, I think is the only place it gets real tight. Is just this portion right here, and it doesn't cross the stream protection zone, so.
Yeah.
I mean, after that, the stream gets further away, so the stream protection zone gets further away. But I mean, it gets close, but it doesn't cross into it.
Okay. Last time we talked about connectivity, which I was pleased to see you show a connection to the road down to Orono Brewing. Has that been finalized? I see you've got the road, goes right to the property limit at the end of, what is it, Noble
House Lane.
Yeah, Noble House Lane. Have you secured that access?
That was actually already existing in their deed,
Okay,
in their deed before we even came the first time.
good. Anybody else want to jump in? I've got a few more, but,
Mine was around the road,
okay.
and I guess to go to 8%, you have to bring a bunch of fill in, right?
Which
Back it up.
would enter into the grading
Yep.
with Johnny Mac Brook, so.
All right, I have some concerns about the gully, station 350 on Noble House Lane
Mhm.
that you propose to fill with 18-inch riprap.
So, yeah, the plan is to, I know I was trying to figure out the best word to call it, and I guess gully is the best word for that.
It looks like a gully on the topo.
It
pretty-
is.
yeah.
So the reason for it, and if you actually, now all my plans are gonna fall, I can guarantee it, just because of the way I put them off. So the orange right here is actually the culvert that comes across Route 2, and that's the sole reason that gully is there, is because it has eroded down across that parcel. So, we obviously can't take that culvert out. That culvert's Route 2, whether it's the town or whether it's DOT. And I mean, you can definitely see it just troughed right down through. So our proposal being to put that rock drain there. And what it will do is it will redistribute the water. So it'll act as a really big level spreader. Because, we had talked about putting a culvert in, which would be 150-foot culvert from TOA slope to TOA slope from here to here. And that would just concentrate the water even more and probably speed the water up even more and make even more of a gully. So, this hole needs to be filled no matter what. So our proposal being that the rock drain would be the best way to do that, to not concentrate the water any more than it already is.
What did our town engineer say about that as well?
So, Mandy reviewed this. She is recommending a culvert there. She had some concerns with just sort of the way that part of the road behaving differently than the rest of the road. So if there's water going through there that's not in a culvert, she had some concerns with freezing and thawing cycles and how that might interact with the rest of the road, which was her main concern and why she recommended a culvert in that area.
That doesn't seem to be typical that you would end up blocking off a gully with riprap. I've seen the rock sandwiches, other,
Right, but this is,
ways to pass wetland flow, but
this is
that one's a
24
little
deep. Yep.
unique.
Yeah. It's 24 feet deep. So it was, trying to figure out how to fill it was definitely a unique.
Right, but there's, as you said, the reason, if you're saying the reason for that gully is that culvert that's existing under Route 2. And I know there's reference to discussions with Rob Yerkes. Rob isn't around anymore. So I don't know if our current Public Works Director has weighed in on that. But there's a reason that gully's there, erodible soils, whatever. But I'm just concerned with continued flows and the types of rainfall that we get now, that if the voids and the riprap, and I know there'll be big voids with 18-inch stone, but if those fill up and if you still have eroded soils, I mean, it's a gully, so you get water moving through there. If that clogs, that's going to be a big issue.
Well, there will be fabric put down, so I mean, that would definitely help because you look-
Yeah, fabric isn't going to stop, sediment from entering the gully, in that where you're building up, you're creating a big riprap dam. That looked like to me, and if those voids fill up and your intent is for the town to accept that road, then there's the potential for the town to have issues fixing that down the road. Well, pun not intended, I guess.
The applicant himself is on the call and has his hand raised. I don't know if you want to hear from him.
Let's hear it.
Okay. Rodney, I see you're on the call, but you're going to have to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Speak up.
Yeah, you'll have to speak up a bit, but we can hear you.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure that everyone here understands that that gully was created, and with all due respect to the town, that gully was created by town stormwater that flows across this property without an easement. So in order to do something here, we've got to do it as affordably as possible. And that's why we looked at the French drain, so to speak, the riprap with the fabric, because that's the cheapest option. But that gully, which anybody who would like to walk it, I'd love to take you down through there because it is massive and it washes sediment clear down to the lower part of the property, which makes it hard to, quite frankly, I got stuck in it last winter, about a foot of mud. That erosion is caused by stormwater coming from the street across Main Street. I don't remember the name of that street, but that's town stormwater that has created this over years and years with no easement. And I just want to make sure you guys understand that. Thank you.
So do you have any more comments about the design? And because you referenced that sediment is moving and you say it's the town's problem, but there's a lot of cross culverts in the town. So do you have any response to whether that clogs or anything like that? That's my question.
Whether what clogs
Well, you're going to create a dam to get a road across that gully station, from about 300 to 400 there, or however wide that's going to be. You're going to block that off with stone. So if you got flow coming out of that culvert and any erodible soils, now you've got, rather than the gully, you've got a big dam across it, whether it's a check dam or whatever, but you still have, the type of soils, the erodible soils that are in that area. So my concern was that water coming out of that culvert, hitting that dam in that 100 feet that I referred to, if that clogs over time, then that water has nowhere to go. You get a really big storm. That could cause some serious issues. And if the town is supposed to take over that road, that concerns me.
Yeah, and I think your concern is valid. But when I started this process, I spoke with the town, and the town spoke with the state of Maine, and there is supposed to be a project that's coming through, and this was 3 years ago, and I was told within 3 or 4 years to come through, and they would take, I don't know if it's Page Place or what the street is across the road, but whatever that street is, they were going to connect that culvert and discontinue the culvert that's bringing the water down across the site. So this French drain, so to speak, was designed and meant to be temporary, to get us through so we could build. And then the water is supposed to be diverted and that culvert eliminated that comes off Main Street and go down towards Johnny Mac Brook. And I guess it would be the west side of Main Street, the west side of Main Street.
All right, thank you. Mitch, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. Do you have any updates on what he's referring to with the plans? Because you know, we can't really decide on what future improvements are. We're looking at the plan in
Yep.
front of us.
So the project he's referring to is the Route 2 corridor project.
Yeah.
And in that project, there is a plan to divert the stormwater away from that site to a different direction. So it's not going to go through that in that way anymore.
You know
That's
the
part of that.
timing of that?
Well, I mean, right now we're into the waiting for the next phase. And at that point, the council has not agreed, and the town has not agreed to move forward. We've just gone into the next phase of that. So it could be 3 years, it could be 5 years, it might not happen. So I don't have the answer, but that's the project we're referring to.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, I'm not sure what the board thinks of that, but this is a,
Does the
It's
town
a tough
have,
one.
what, the town could decide not to take these roads,
true,
right? We could just say we're not taking them.
yeah, that happens a lot.
I feel like putting a temporary solution, which it was just kind of stated it was a temporary solution,
Mhm.
when there may not be a permanent solution coming.
Yeah.
Feels to me like a problem.
Yep.
And I understand the owner's frustration, because it's not necessarily a problem he caused, but at the same time, I don't want as a town person to own that problem.
Right.
So,
So things that I was thinking about is, again, you've got to fill the gully, whether it's just to get your road across it. You got to put something there. And whether it's fill material or riprap. But I'm just concerned if that riprap clogs, that you're just creating a dam. And again, with a temporary situation, I don't know when that's gonna happen, but that, again, that concerns me. That, what do others think? Anybody?
Um, I I don't always catch everything that has been said, so if it's already been said, okay. There's also a suggestion, and I think it's one we need to take seriously, that if we put the riprap and then put the road over the riprap without putting a culvert in, that we're going to have one kind of soil under most of the road, and then we're going to have this totally different substrate under that part of the road. And then as it gets very hot in the summer or very cold in the winter, those two different materials are going to react differently in terms of shrinkage or expansion. And there's going to be a weak place in the road.
I think that's what our town engineer, that was her concern. Yeah. Other comments on that?
Kind of for my own edification, what is I think the steepest road in Orono is probably Harrison Ave. What's the grade on that road?
That I don't know off the top of my head.
What I'm getting at is if I lived on Harrison Ave, that's a very steep road. It's in the same basin. And in the winter, I had a lot of concerns about the road before it was repaved, accidents, et cetera. And if we have on top of that some kind of structural road issues, that would be a concern of mine.
I just want to clarify that we're talking about two different roads. So the
Okay.
waiver request is for Brookside, and this that's on the plan now
that's
is
the
Noble
section.
House.
Okay.
Yes.
Fortunately, that's the benefit of connectivity. If you have multiple entrances, so if it's really slippery out or something, people could enter off the OBC access if that's provided. So that's the benefit of connectivity, looping and all those things. Yeah, I have issues with moving ahead with that concept. I don't think it's necessarily a great idea at the moment. If it's temporary fine if they reroute flow, but we don't know if and when that's gonna happen. And our town engineer has weighed in, that's what she gets paid to do, is protect the town. I have an engineering background too, it concerns me as well. So,
I don't have your engineering background, but I just like the old term, water goes where it wants to go.
Yeah.
You can try to reroute it all you want, but wherever it wants to go, it's gonna find a way. The other thing, the culvert you're talking about, is that like the culvert they built on the Orono VZ Town line that off Route 2? The new industrial type concrete culverts?
oh, okay.
Is that what you're talking about? Going across Route 1, across Route 2? Yeah.
With that redevelopment, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't think that they have any idea. I don't. I don't know if they're that.
Because that was a flow problem down there. That's why they put the new concrete culvert in.
Yeah, because they're oversizing culverts.
They're
just-
oversizing all replacement culverts.
Yeah, open bottom a lot of times,
Yeah.
natural substrate, all that.
I can't imagine they do that. They closed that road for like 2 months. I don't think it closed Route 2 for 2 months.
Yeah. I'm gonna side with our town engineer on this one. And ask that an alternative be presented. Do people agree with that?
I do.
Yeah, okay. Bob,
Well, I think there needs to be something that's clear before this project can go forward. I mean,
Yeah.
this has got to be fixed.
okay. All right. Thoughts on the sidewalk? Our engineer mentioned moving it to the other side. I think the explanation we heard makes sense to me that if they can minimize grading and not interfere with the stream protection zone and the sidewalks on that side of the road, I don't necessarily have any issue with that at the moment. Others, what do you think on that? Is that okay? Yep. Can you talk about the stormwater treatment? You know, that there's I don't know how wide it is at the, the bottom of the hill, just, yeah. Can you talk about that reserve for stormwater and treatment and what your intent is with that?
Hold on.
Yeah, well, that's one on the floor. So this is our D2 street drain, post-development drainage. And so what we're showing is that this area, these bottom lots aren't being treated right now. You good? These aren't being treated right now by the pond, but the pond is sized to treat them in the future. I could still meet the numbers with the HydroCAD without treating those because all the water goes cross-country long before it gets anywhere. So we're not showing the ditch right now, but it's being shown on the deeds that it's going to be conserved for future ditching to get the lots to the pond. Because right now, we're actually treating the stormwater that's coming off these lots because there's no treatment going on and it's all flowing in that direction. So even though the pond is sized to meet all our development, we're actually treating stuff that's not part of our development. So right now, we're not, as we're showing, we're not treating these, but if and when there's future development, that's being set aside so that we can.
Yeah, one of the things, what's the rationale for not putting in a ditch now?
Just the amount of earth moving. I think he really is just trying to limit his work to doing the road at the moment.
It looks like, and I really don't know that area all that well, but I am seeing it. There's a concrete wall, like at the back of, is that OBC? There's a wall back there?
Oh, I don't know about here. I know there's one right here, so I had to kind of put the pond over in a different area.
It looks like it's,
Midway.
yeah, 750. Yeah, about 300 feet perhaps of
Yeah, there is a wall that's big. Well, that's one of the reasons the lots are shaped the way they are is because there's that wall back there and they're trying to keep the lots on that side of the wall. There goes my.
One of the things, I'm just looking at, because if you develop the lots, put in houses and driveways and such that, and I'm just wondering, drainage off the backside. If it might, probably remote, but if it would have any impact on that wall, because you're just sending more stormwater runoff, if you turn a bunch of that vegetated area into.
It was all gravel at one point and going down over that wall. So now that what's been revegetated, it's probably slowed it down, but what was going there before was when it was open gravel pit.
Yeah. So the wet pond. And then the existing pond, I believe there might have been some town concern about the pond that's down near that reserved right of way that might connect to Margin Street at some point.
Yeah, so in the initial completeness letter to the applicant, we had expressed some concerns around wanting to understand the depth of that pond, what that pond was, et cetera, and whether that posed a safety issue near a residential development. I believe the applicants are proposing a gate at the end of the road to partially address that concern, although I will say I don't know that the concern has gone away with clarity on the depth of that pond.
Yeah, what was staff recommendation on that?
Of course, the preference would probably be to see some sort of fence or some sort of way to address some safety concerns.
Mhm. What are your thoughts on that? You see there's the little carve out for the water management pond now, but there's a deep pond farther on down. Do you think it's part of this application that we might need to address that?
Maybe I missed, so is that not ordinance that all ponds have to be fenced? Okay,
No, that's
No.
not an ordinance
No,
requirement.
just-
And frankly, in some cases, if it's a man-made stormwater ponds that's not that deep, we probably wouldn't want to fence for aesthetic purposes, but this is actually a fairly deep pond.
We have required fencing before, so orchard trails. There's, the trail that goes right by it's right near my house. But they have a pond around, a fence around that pond for safety reasons, a safety bench, all that. So for stormwater ponds, we have town precedent where we've required that in the past. Just for reference, but that's the stormwater pond. I just figured town staff brought it up, so.
yeah, they did bring it up. I guess.
Yeah.
The river's just another
Yeah,
300 or
yeah.
400 feet.
Yeah.
You can jump in the river. I don't know.
Okay.
That's just my 2 cents, is that putting a big fence around a pond doesn't.
Yeah, I was thinking the gate if you're.
Well,
Gonna-
the applicant has actually proposed the existing gate that's on the Brookside right up by Route 2 right now to relocate it down after
The end of the road.
the Bangor gas easement. He plans on relocating it back down here, so that would deter vehicles from getting any further.
Well,
I'm-
the stormwater pond, I can understand because the level of the water can change significantly in a short period of time.
Yeah,
And children
on
could
how
be
deep it
playing
is.
on,
Yep.
on level ground
Yeah.
and have it fill rapidly. So that would be why you would have that fenced in, correct?
Were you intending to put any fencing around the stormwater pond?
Well, this whole top edge of the stormwater pond is actually a retaining wall. So, there's that protection on that side. That's part of the town easement. So that would be something that, like Isabel said, it's not necessarily in the ordinance, but it would be taken under advisement if you guys were requesting that.
The applicant has his hand raised, and I don't know if it was from last time or if he wants to unmute to discuss this point.
All right,
Yeah, I've lost track of things that I've got comments about, but you had mentioned the retaining wall behind OBC. That was a retaining wall for a concrete plant, which is probably 20, 25 feet high. The wall that you're seeing on the plan is octagon blocks made from that concrete plant, where they used waste concrete and just shored that up when there was a hot mix plant there and a crusher and a wash plant. So that's what that wall is. I would go back to the erosion caused by the town's water. I have no issue with putting in a culvert. The culvert that dumps into that has eroded it is a 12 to 18-inch culvert, corrugated metal pipe. I don't have an issue with putting a pipe down through there, but I think the town ought to consider financing that, paying for that. And quite frankly, honestly, I think the town ought to consider filling that as well. And these are things that I talked about with the town 3 years ago. Just about everything you brought up, we've talked about 3 years ago. So anyhow, those are my two comments. And then my comment on the pond down at the bottom, it really has nothing to do with this application. So I don't understand why that is an issue. And quite frankly, to be honest, when that was a hot mix plant and a wash plant and a crusher down there, with 30 to 40 trucks going out that 10% slope every day, there's Jersey barrier around a portion of that pond, and there's fencing around a portion of that pond as well, and the rest of it's overgrown pretty heavily. So again, I'm not sure why that's an issue, but that's what I know.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm okay with the gate if they move the gate, but town staff had identified it, and that's our job, is to discuss these things. So the guardrail issue, can we, that's another one that still need to provide some guidance. So right now I mentioned a curb.
It would run along the side of the sidewalk, the outside side of the sidewalk.
Correct.
That's where that guardrail will go, right?
Yeah, because it drops right off to, it's that steep slope going down toward the brook.
The concern
I mean,
is cars going off of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's other options. There's big boulders. I don't know if there's any stones left over from the pit operations. I mean, there's other barriers you can put that, might just deter people from driving down over the edge, but I'm not sure that a guardrail is the be all end all, but maybe perhaps some kind of barrier, just to steep slope, just to prevent people from, perhaps jumping the curb, going down in the brook. What are your thoughts on that?
Cars do stray off the road even when there is a curb. The flower bed at the base of Kelly Road has been run over 3 times in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm. So would we like some kind of barrier, whether it's a guardrail or something else? What do you?
I like your granite barriers, like they do at the national parks coming down the trails. But pretty expensive.
Yeah. I'm just some kind of barrier is what I'm thinking about.
But the steel barrier aesthetically wouldn't look very nice.
Yeah. So a barrier to be determined. And
I don't have a good sense for how much space there is between that sidewalk and things get rough.
Yeah.
I would wonder what the state of the vegetation is too, right? Because that's an aesthetically pleasing barrier, but if we're 10 years out from, if people want some sort of a barrier there and we're 10 years out from the vegetation being effective, that might not be a good plan. But if we're close and the vegetation's grown up enough,
Mhm.
that would certainly be the best looking, most natural looking probably for residents.
All right, sounds like, can you come back with final, just some kind of
So the only concern we had with doing anything, either a guardrail or anything like that, is there's just going to have to be more clearing, and that's going to put your grading further out towards Johnny Mac Brook. Because if you look at the side of the sidewalk, the back slope starts just at the edge of the sidewalk. So to put a guardrail in, you would have to have more flat spot and have the guardrail on the back side of that sidewalk. And we're just trying to limit the amount of grading. And right now, there's a pretty significant amount of vegetation. And again, the grading that is being done on the shoulder of the sidewalk is as minimal as possible. So like she said, you know, I don't think it's going to be 10 years out that the vegetation is going to reestablish, but I have a feeling that it would come back rather quickly.
Well, we need to provide some guidance. What are your thoughts on it? Do you want some kind of barrier? Or are we gonna let the vegetation serve that purpose? Opinions, please?
Could they put a sign up, just, you know,
Fine, that's-
careful or something?
I always prefer vegetation because of the, you
Yeah.
know, absorbing water and not disturbing things near the streets. So if it is going to be effective, that would always be my preference.
Yeah, I have a hard time requiring a metal barrier be placed
No,
300 feet
I
down that
agree.
road. And
That's why I'm just thinking,
cars should be going 20, 25 miles an hour,
Yeah.
right? They shouldn't be flying down there.
Right.
And if they are, they should, they
Yeah.
deserve it.
yeah.
I lived on Harrison for a while. People fly down that hill.
Well,
so-
gravity
But that's on them.
Yeah.
gravity gets in charge.
Guess I'm gonna ask you to look at it, see if you can fit, I'm not asking for, or we're not asking for a guardrail, but if you can just provide something that might deter traffic from, or people from going down the street, I think you can be creative and come up with something.
Maybe put some trees there or something.
Yeah, think about it and come back to us with something, please. She said, does that cover it? Questions from the board before I open it up? All right, I am gonna open up the public hearing. Please step up to the mic, tell us who you are and if, what your concerns might be.
Up here or just like take a seat
You can
here?
sit down for a bit, give you a break.
If we don't have anybody in person that's planning to step up, I do have a couple of people online with their hand raised.
All right, let's hear online.
Hello,
Yeah, we can hear you now.
you want me to go first?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
Hi, I'm Catherine Thibodeau. I'm here as the Executive Director of Independence Advocates of Maine. We are the lot that is on the corner of Main Street and what you are all referring to as the OBC access road. That road actually runs across Independence Advocates of Maine's property. You know, pet peeve of mine is that it's never recognized. But that's not really what I'm here to comment on. I don't have any concerns about the subdivision per se, but I do have some questions and concerns about that access out onto what is called Alewife Way right now, which is the access road. And my questions really are about the easement and who the easement and the right of way is with, and whether that is with OBC or Hub LLC, or whatever their corporate name is, or in fact, is there an easement with the 234 Main Street property? I'm not aware of one, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there is not one. And then second, in general, I have some questions about what the proposed use of that access is. I appreciate the town wanting a second access, but that road is, you know, as people use it, OBC, I think we could look back on their site plan, and I think they said they predicted 5 to 10 cars a day maximum going up and down that road. We know it's a lot more than that, and they've been great neighbors, and that's fine, but I would have concerns about that use. There are no sidewalks on that road, and so what would be the pedestrian access to down into the subdivision? And I think those are my questions and comments at this time.
Thank you. Can you answer the easement question or who?
I
Who
might,
holds that
I might
easement?
have to turn to Rodney, but the easement appears to be with Hub LLC.
Okay,
Can you hear me all right?
Yes, now we can.
I think I can address a couple things for Catherine. The first thing is when Lane Construction, a former owner of the property, sold the property, a piece of the property to Orono Brewing Company, they retained a right of way down that road to access their property. When my partner and I purchased the property, we also made sure that there was a right of way. Excuse me, let me step back. We had sold Orono Holdings. My partner and I had sold Hub LLC, which is Orono Brewing, had sold them, I think, a 3.12 acre piece. And when we sold that to them, we specifically stated that we wanted to retain a right of way down through there. So I don't think it's an easement. I think it's a right of way. But to answer one of, I think it was Catherine's questions about traffic, this connectivity onto Alewife Avenue or whatever it's called was supposed to be for emergency vehicles only. It was supposed to be gated. So traffic from the subdivision would not be going up that road. It would only be opened in the event of a public safety situation. That was the intent. So I don't know where we're at now, but that was the original intent.
Can I respond to
didn't
that?
see- Yeah, I didn't see a gate. Did you intend on having a gate there? I didn't notice it on the plan.
I don't think we're showing one right now, but that definitely would be part of it.
I can't hear her.
No, I understand that.
Yep.
We're not showing one right now, but we definitely can add that to the plans for final.
Okay.
Yeah, the
I
gate
think
was in the
that
text.
if that was an emergency, if that was emergency access, then I would have much less of a concern with that. And it's not for us to answer today, but I don't quite understand how OBC's right of way easement then there carries over to Independence Advocates of Maine's property, but that's not to answer today. But I mean, just the mere fact that the gate would be there makes that much less concerning. The reality is people will be using it as a pedestrian access and less of a concern per se for myself, but it is quite a heavily used road.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. All right. Do we haven't, you mentioned, are there any other people online?
Yes. Marguerite, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm Marguerite Rusin. I live on Margin Street. And my primary concern, and I knew that development was eventual. I've been in my house for 21 years. And I knew that once the construction company left, that this would be in the works. I was wondering if this could be a mixed income housing situation. It doesn't look like it. You can comment on that. And also, if you would comment again about the sewer concerns, the aging sewer on Margin Street and how it's related to this project. Thank you.
Marguerite, yeah, I didn't catch your first comment. I missed it.
I wondered if this is going to be mixed income housing. It doesn't look like that. And why not? Yeah. Okay, that's all.
Rodney, or you want to take those?
Honestly, I don't know what the intention is. I mean, he's probably gonna make the lots market value, and whoever buys it can build whatever they want. It's all gonna be sold and build, so whatever there is room for on the lot, that's what they can build.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
How about the sewer comment?
Yeah, I can speak a little bit more to the sewer comment. So what came out of our staff review on this project was that there needed or there was some concerns with regard to the aging sewer infrastructure in this area. And essentially what we have come to an agreement on with the applicants is that while there is preliminary capacity to serve this development, there needs to be some upgrades made. And so we're essentially prorating their impact by requiring them to replace their section essentially. And the town would be responsible for replacing the remainder of that section.
Good, thank you, Isabel. Did you catch that, Marguerite?
Yes, yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Ryan Tipping. I live at 279 Main Street, which is between the Sunset and Johnny Mac Brook, with another neighbor between us and the brook. I had the same question about how much these properties were going to cost and, what kind of families or what kind of range of if that information was already available, and I just couldn't find it. I was wondering if it could be made available. I had a question. The wetland delineation for the entire site, is that a public document that's available?
Yeah, so the wetland delineation is available in our public planning board's material folder if you are interested in looking at that. It's available through the website. Yep.
Great. I was talking to a couple neighbors about this. We all got the postcards, and a couple of them were actually having trouble looking at the documents on their phones or their computers. I was wondering if it's possible to get a map to at least borrow and share with a couple neighbors who couldn't make it out tonight.
I think everything is available. Paper copies are available at the town office.
Okay.
So they're always,
I will say we
Okay,
don't
understood.
currently have the ability to make copies, but you are always welcome to come view them in the town office. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we can set up a joint meeting. With the additional traffic that would come out of, it's Brookside is the name. There's no crosswalk there to get to the sidewalk on the other side of Main Street. Is there a possibility to have a crosswalk put in there, or is that like a DOT thing?
I think that'd be a town decision, town and DOT. I would assume a crosswalk placement has to be approved by, bigger powers than us.
Just, I got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and during the pandemic, Johnny Mac Brook was a great place to go and like just be out of the house exploring. And we still take walks through there, and it would be great to have another neighborhood to go down. And also just the idea of someone building housing is great. Obviously, we need it in our area, we need it in our town, we need it in our state. So I would love to take Mr. Lane up on the offer to come walk through the site, if that's an offer to anybody and not just planning board members. I think there's a couple of us that would love to take a walk. So yeah, that's I think all the questions I had. There is an existing like chain link fence along Brookside, isn't there? I mean, it's like kind of torn down and rusty, I think, at this point. But you were talking about where a barrier, if there was a sidewalk placed there. I just wanted to know that I think there is already something existing.
Not aware of that.
I think they would need to at least. Sorry, I'm not on. They would need to at least slightly widen the existing access drive that's there. I don't know exactly where the chain link fence is placed, but they would need to widen that just slightly for the to meet our public road standards for the town. So it may be in the vicinity of that area.
Cool. Thank you.
Mr. Lane, you have your hand up?
Yeah, to answer the gentleman's question, I'd be glad to meet with anyone and walk the site with them. And my number is 207-461-2081.
Could you repeat that one more time?
207-461-2081. And I'd be glad to
Thank
walk
you.
the site with anyone.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? All right, I'm gonna close the public hearing. Limit further comments from the board. I think we addressed all the concerns from staff that I heard. Any other comments?
I have one small question. And that is, we have marked on the road that runs through the development that there will be no on-street parking.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And I can see with a narrow, relatively narrow road that you wouldn't want people using that as their permanent parking spot. On the other hand, it seems that people from time to time have company and there's more than one car involved. And somehow those people should be able to park on the street and other narrow streets in town. You know, there's an agreement that if you're gonna park on the street, it's only on this side, not on that side. So that, you know, with people waiting for each other, we can still pass and go through.
Yeah.
And so that's,
I think that was a fire department request.
It was, yeah. So if you go through the completeness letter comments, the fire department made that request specifically that that be marked with no parking on that side of the road for public safety access issues.
It's actually shown on sheet C3.
So a request from our town public safety requested that. So I tend to defer to them.
now I'm just wondering about the whole situation. I mean, my guess is that they're going to be ignored.
They may be. All right, so question for you, waiver requests, we will vote on those tonight, or is that final?
I would recommend waiting until final. As you mentioned, there's going to end up being one more waiver request. So I would recommend waiting on that until final.
Okay, and you did say we need to present findings this evening.
Yes, yep.
All right, so I'm just thinking we have a list of conditions. Were we adding anything to the lengthy list of conditions that
There was
Isabel?
two, right?
Yeah,
Alternative solution, the stormwater connected to the culvert across Route 2.
Yeah.
And then present a barrier option down the sidewalk side of Brookside Drive.
that sounds right to me. All right, so we have proposed findings of fact that our town planner has provided to us. These are available to you folks to review. But our current policy is to include this as part of our motion. So I don't have to read 8 pages of findings of fact, which I appreciate. But if we could have a motion, please. You want to take it?
Sure. Yeah. Been a while.
Just read this.
I move that we approve the preliminary major subdivision application of Orono Holdings LLC revised through December 18, 2024 to create a 19 lot residential subdivision located at 73 Margin Street. Further findings of fact and conditions of approval included in the meeting packet dated January 15, 2025. Standard conditions. These findings of fact are, I need to read even the first 6, even though they're in the record? Is that what we're doing still?
No, you can just say with the
Additions.
additions of, yes.
With the 2 additional conditions of approval. Number 7, an alternative solution to the stormwater culvert that crosses Route 2. And condition 8, present a barrier option down the sidewalk side of Brookside Drive.
Just want to clarify. So the alternative is not the culvert to Route 2.
The rock drain.
It's
It's
Noble House.
the connector to
Yeah.
the culvert crossing Route 2.
I'll second that motion.
Very good. Thanks. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Very good. All right, next up, we have another public hearing. This is the site plan application of Beacon Orchard Trails 2 LLC for a new 2,650 square foot drive-through restaurant with associated site improvements, parking, landscaping, driveways at 111 Park Street, tax map 20-1, lot 42 in the C2 zoning district. If we could, again, similar to last time, hear from Isabel first and then follow up with you.
Yes, so the applicant is before the planning board requesting site plan review in order to construct a new 2,650 square foot drive-through restaurant with associated site improvements. That includes parking, landscaping, access drives, etc. The project development is anticipated to result in about 34,000 square feet of new impervious surface and 38,000 square feet of new landscaped area. This project is located at 111 Park Street, tax map 20-1, lot 42. The aerial view is the entirety of the site that's highlighted. They are proposing only a limited area, which I can show on the site plan here. So the proposed building is sort of in the vicinity of the existing house that's on the parcel, and they're proposing to divide the parcel at this point for this new development, and then also construct an emergency access drive through the rear of the parcel. They're proposing two-way access from Orchard Trails Drive, which I do want to note is a private road, but it is owned by these same applicants. So they're proposing the two-way access there and then one-way access out onto Park Street. And we'll talk a little bit more about traffic and access in just a second. So with regards to the unique issues that the planning board wants me to talk about, section 18-126-1C does require a 10-foot buffer strip between new parking areas and Route 2. This is our design guidelines for this section of Route 2. This section also requires one shade tree that's at least 5 feet tall and at least 1-inch caliper to be planted no nearer than 5 feet to any lot line for each 300 square feet of required landscaped area, and at least one deciduous shrub or evergreen at least 18 inches to be planted for each 200 square feet of finished landscape area. The applicant is proposing 3 swamp white oak trees of their 2-inch caliper and a minimum of 6 feet when they're planted. 3 Armstrong red maple trees, again, 2-inch caliper, minimum of 6 feet, and then a variety of shrubs and other underplantings. There are also, I just want to note, while they're not specifically required by our design guidelines for this section of Route 2, there are some additional plantings that are proposed within the landscape areas just outside of the required buffer area. So I didn't include those in the total, but they are shown on the landscape plan submitted. So with regards to trees and natural resources, wetlands and potential vernal pools have been identified again on the entirety of the 10.59 acre site by Flycatcher. That report is included in the meeting packet and was dated November 14th. There were no streams identified on the overall project parcel. There are 2 potential vernal pools and 6 wetland areas that were identified, the majority of which are located at the rear of the overall site, so closest to the apartments at Washburn Place. The project that's currently under review is more than 250 feet away from the potential vernal pools and their associated wetlands. And I do just want to note that the proposed project will fill 1,336 square feet of wetland. These are not wetlands of special significance, which would be regulated by DEP. They are still required, though, to send a pre-construction notification to the Army Corps of Engineers for the wetland fill prior to any construction. Our ordinance requires the identification of trees on the submitted survey plans. There are 14 I'm sorry, I should specify that it's trees greater than 12-inch caliper or 12-inch diameter at breast height. So there are 14 pines and 5 oaks shown on the submitted survey that are in the area of the proposed building within the proposed parking lot, which I do want to note is required by the ordinance to be located either on the side or the rear of the building, and the area to be graded for the vegetated under-drained soil filter. The remaining trees and wooded areas will be preserved to the extent shown on the submitted plans. I believe it's sheet 03, and protected through the use of construction fencing as shown on the plans. So I didn't do our standard condition for construction fencing because they've already proposed it here. The wetlands and potential vernal pools have been identified, as I mentioned. the site is currently partially developed. There's a single family home there. There's an additional 0.6 acres of meadow area, and the remainder of the site is wooded. And there are no steep slopes, floodplains, significant wildlife habitats, fisheries, scenic areas, habitat for rare and endangered plants and animals, unique natural communities and natural areas. That's all from available mapping from the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, nor are there any sand and gravel aquifers on the site. So with regard to traffic, I have a couple of slides related to traffic and access, so bear with me. So using the 11th edition of the ITE Trip Gen Manual, the total daily hour trips on weekdays for the site are projected at 1,414. That's based on an average trip gen rate for this use per 1,000 square feet. And the average, so the average trips per 1,000 square feet is 533. They're projected to generate about 244 trips in the AM peak hour and 94 trips in the PM peak hour, because of the use being a coffee shop. As the development will generate more than 200 vehicle trips within the AM peak hour, again, a traffic movement permit is required from DOT. So they had submitted an analysis, their consultant rather had submitted an analysis to DOT that the town was copied on. So that's where this information is coming from. That's also publicly available on our website and in your packet. So the intersection of Park Street and Orchard Trails Drive is currently functioning at a level of service C. Level of service is how DOT sort of measures how a road is functioning. And that's functioning at that level mainly due to traffic congestion. The development isn't anticipated to impact this level of service below its current level, per analysis submitted by the applicant's representatives. As we have discussed in the previous application, the town and DOT has undertaken a Route 2 transportation study that recommends a two-way center left turn lane for this area of Park Street. The analysis submitted by the applicant's representative notes that a left turn lane is warranted in this area, and DOT gives staff some leeway around how we would like that to be paid for by the applicants, essentially. So town staff has communicated to DOT that we would prefer to see the left lane constructed prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, because it would be needed to enable this development at the applicant's expense. We have provided the applicant's representatives with the preliminary specs from the Route 2 transportation study so that it can be designed according to those specifications. We do anticipate that this will be a condition of any approval from Maine DOT of the traffic movement permit, but we have also suggested a condition at the local level as well, if that would be favorable. So with regard to access, there is currently one curb cut from Route 2 that's serving the existing house lot. The proposed vehicle access to the site will be from a two-way 24-foot access drive from Orchard Trails Drive. That's intended, well, that's a private road, again, owned by the applicant, and then they're proposing a one-way access drive from the site onto Route 2 that will be utilized as an exit from the drive-through. We have some minimum site distance requirements of 250 feet for roads where the speed limit is posted at 30 miles an hour. So the site distance from the Park Street curb cut exceeds 500 feet looking left and 400 feet looking right, based on the analysis submitted by the applicants. And the exit onto Orchard Trails Drive, which is an unposted private road where the speed limit is assumed to be 25 miles an hour, a site distance of more than 300 feet was recorded looking left. And then looking right from the exit, the intersection with Park Street is very clearly visible. The proposed two-way 24-foot access from Orchard Trails is really intended to be a connection point to future development. I do want to note that that's not contemplated with this application. They're showing the roadway sort of ending in a hammerhead there with a gate for emergency access. After review of both the 2014 comprehensive plan policy and the 2018 Park Street transportation study, staff is recommending a condition that any future development would provide or extend that connection point to Washburn Drive in an effort to alleviate traffic congestion on Park Street. The sort of thought process behind the 2014 plan was that, and this is fairly typical in other communities with a major roadway like Route 2 or Route 1 or Route et cetera, running through them, is to sort of provide these local access roads off of that road to alleviate the major congestion on the street. Okay, so the parking and maneuver layouts that were both in and into and internal to the site were reviewed by the fire department. The applicants had submitting turning movements for the fire department's apparatus and internal circulation and ingress and egress to the site have been found to be appropriate and in accordance with the relevant standard. There is currently a sidewalk along Park Street, so internal to the site, pedestrian sidewalks are proposed to provide some public access from the existing sidewalk along Park Street, sort of pulling people in and from the parking area to the building entrances. And that's also ordinance requirement for this section of Park Street. So with regard to drainage and stormwater, again, the proposals for the construction of a new 2,650 square foot drive-through restaurant with associated site work. They're going to be creating about 34,000 square feet of new impervious area, and 73,000 square feet of developed area. This will require a permit by rule from DEP. Again, the majority of the site consists of wooded areas with wetlands. There are no existing drainage structures on site. The development proposes the use of one under-drain soil filter. The portion of the runoff that will be collected by catch basins and then will be routed to the filter through a closed drainage system. And then the remaining portion of the site runoff will flow to ditches that convey the stormwater to that under-drain soil filter from the east and the west. And then that will provide some treatment and slowly release the stormwater to the existing closed drainage system within Park Street. So that being said, the net impact of the post-development peak flows draining to the vegetated swale along Orchard Trails Drive, as well as the wetland areas along the eastern side of the site, will remain at or below pre-development levels in all storm models, so 2, 10, and 25-year storms. There will be a slight impact to the municipal system within Park Street since nothing drains there currently, but we've suggested some conditions related to some requirements for the MS4 permit for the community. An erosion control plan was submitted. This was reviewed by Megan Hess and was found to be appropriate. The erosion control measures that will be implemented include temporary erosion control measures during construction. So a crushed stone stabilized entrance, the placement of silt fences or erosion control berms where necessary, the installation of stone check dams where necessary, mulching and seeding, slope stabilization, and the sweeping of adjacent roadways of tracked soil when necessary. So we're not tracking soil out onto the roadways. Post-construction, the disturbed areas not subject to other proposed conditions will be loamed and seeded. So with regard to lighting and signage, the proposal does include new pole-mounted site lighting in the parking lot. Building-mounted site lighting is also proposed along with bollards. They have provided lighting cut sheets, which are included in the packet, showing that all proposed light fixtures rated at more than 1,800 lumens, which is the sort of cutoff point of our ordinance, or the review point for our ordinance rather, are downcast so that no direct light is emitted above the light source. Again, that's an ordinance requirement. The proposed main entrance to the building faces Park Street and has an intersecting or overlaid hipped roof with signage and a canopy over the doorway in order for the entrance to be clearly identified. And I'm calling that out specifically because that is an ordinance requirement for this section of Park Street with their design standards. And then there's a secondary entrance to the building, which is located to the side facing the parking areas, which has another shorter intersecting hipped roof with a canopy and signage. I do want to note that signage is not being contemplated by the planning board. They have provided signage for illustrative purposes only, and that will be reviewed by the code enforcement officer in accordance with section 18-140. With regard to utilities, during construction, the contractor will be responsible for the disposal of waste, and post-construction, they are showing a dumpster pad and fenced-in area on the submitted plans. A private waste management company will be contracted for trash and recycling pickups, so no impact to municipal services there. The Orono Water Pollution Control Facility provides sanitary sewer service from an existing 8-inch sewer main that runs along the eastern side of Park Street. The applicants are proposing to connect to that. WPCF has indicated that they have adequate capacity to handle this project's waste generation. And the capacity to serve email was included in your meeting packet. Likewise, the Orono VZ Water District provides water service on Park Street on the same side as the proposed development, and they have also provided a capacity to serve email that has been included in your meeting packet. The proposed development will provide electrical, telephone, telecommunication service, and natural gas. Those are adequate to meet the anticipated use of the project and will be undergrounded consistent with section 18177L. With regard to waivers, there are none requested. A number of items have been determined to be not applicable based on the proposal though, which are detailed in the applicant's cover letter and the attached checklist, and staff is in agreement with these items. And then in terms of conditions, I almost went through these earlier, so I won't spend too much time on them, but we have our standard conditions. And then our additional conditions would be that the signage is reviewed by the code enforcement officer. There's a requirement in our ordinance that the required landscaped buffer areas are maintained in good condition by the owner. And going further than that, the section requires that vegetation that dies within the required buffer area is replaced quickly, but at least within one growing season, with replacements that conform to the original intent of landscape design. They are required to provide an application for the proposed curb cut. I would like to leave that condition in, but I would like to verify it because it is already an existing curb cut. So leave it in for now, but I will verify. And then the stormwater as-built drawings are submitted to the code enforcement officer. That's in accordance with chapter 13. Again, that's related to the community's MS4 permit requirements. A stormwater maintenance agreement is to be filed on the registry of deeds. That condition on future development providing or extending the roadway connection to Washburn Drive. And I do want to note that if that connection is developed in accordance with town standards for public roads, they would be eligible to petition the town council to take over maintenance of that roadway. So potentially an incentive there. Our town engineer had requested that the plan set was revised to revise a manhole. That has now been added to the plan set that was included in your meeting packet. And then the proposed left turn lane will be constructed at the applicant's expense according to preliminary specifications. And I think I mentioned the wrong engineering firm in your findings. It is Sebago Technics that did our Route 2 study. So clarifying that there. That's all for me. The applicant's representative is here, and then some of the applicants are online as well if you have questions.
Thanks. Thanks, Isabel. Mike Triglione here with Acorn Engineering, project civil engineer. Ryan Senator is the project architect. He's on the call, as well as the developers, Ali and Adam from North Beacon. So not sure if I have much to add after Isabel's presentation, but I think we can just open up to any questions the board might have.
Yep. Again, before I open up the public hearing, limit questions from the board. Somebody want to fire away?
I've got a question about traffic.
Yep.
Looking at the traffic permit application, as a drive-through, will traffic back up onto Park Street?
So I can say the layout of the site was really driven by maximizing the queue length on kind of the developed portion of the parcel. So I think we have a 14 car stack there, which is pretty healthy. And then it's gonna stack up. It's definitely not gonna stack up all the way to Park Street since it has to go through Orchard Trails Drive. So I believe the traffic movement permit takes this into consideration and looks at it, but
You have a site plan that shows that stack?
yeah, you can pull up
Is Bob, the
C10.
access coming off of Orchard Trails Drive. So, I mean, that would be a really long stack.
So
Yeah, so you can see
Over
the,
Joe's, that's why I'm thinking.
Yeah,
about
no,
it,
good,
because that
good
does
point.
back up onto Park Street.
Yeah,
yeah, it's definitely was one of the driving factors. And you can see like the big open area there in the middle of the site is just to extend that stack as long as possible.
so you show 14, but I mean, it looks like could add another another 14 probably just to get out to Orchard Trails.
Yeah, and then you
So it appears to be sufficient.
get 40 cars. maybe.
So you think
Yeah.
it's adequate?
Yeah, it looks like, I mean, if you, he shows 14 and then you go around back out to that access road. Yeah, that looks like another 14. So, geez, you'd have almost a 25 car stack anyways. Just eyeballing.
The only time I could see a
Yeah.
traffic congestion problem is during class changes. When you guys, when they back up on Orchard Trail coming out of those apartments,
Yeah.
trying to make a left-hand turn.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have people going into Starbucks, hoping that someone gives them a clearance to take a left-hand turn off of Orchard Trail to get into Starbucks.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if there's nobody courtesy at just those 2 times in the, 3 or 4 times in the day,
Yeah,
then you don't have, then you could have a backup onto Park Street.
yeah, perhaps. Yeah. Did you understand his?
Yeah, I understand what he's saying. It is a stop sign, so
Yeah.
I mean, it stops every car. So hypothetically, they would be able to just give a second for a car to make a left-hand turn into there. Understand the concern there, but
I was just curious on just the size, because just looking at this, again, just eyeballing it, you were able to stay under an acre to avoid like chapter 500 permitting.
yeah, so I believe it's like 36,000 square feet of impervious somewhere in there, but we are actually designing it to meet chapter 500 standards.
Yeah.
Just so that when they go to build the next part of this development in
yeah.
the future, they don't have to retrofit this development
Okay.
to meet chapter 500. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're kind of going above and beyond the town standards as far as stormwater treatment and everything, just to design this to chapter 500.
I noticed that the town required that maintenance agreement, the MS4 agreement, which is nice because you have your pond discharges or the under drain soil filter discharges to the catch basin on Park Street. So
Yeah.
that system's going to be inspected all the time or every year anyway. So that's good.
Is the exit onto Park Street right turn only?
Onto Park Street, no, it's
So they can go
right
left
or
there?
left, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I had was these traffic stats are alarming. With how many accidents there are there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, and I think the left-hand turn lane mitigates some of that. But taking a left out of there might, because now that road's gonna be widened. So they're gonna have to go farther across to take a left, and they're gonna be going left, because they're going there to go to before school, grab stuff, and then take a left to go to campus.
I was curious on that. Is the proposal for that, it said 2-way left-hand turn, and I wanted you to explain that a little bit more so that everybody understood. I can see the markings. So there's the crosshatch, there's a triangular shape before the left-hand turn, going into Orchard Trails Drive. But I would just, my thought was, or I was wondering whether the road is going to be widened, or is it just the existing footprint, you're just going to
I might be able to
Restrict.
speak to that a little bit better
Why
from the
don't you?
Route 2. So this might be, just so you know, the left turn lane might be revised slightly. This is not reflecting the specs that I more recently sent to their traffic engineer.
Yeah.
It does require a slight widening of Route 2. Essentially, the specs for Route 2 sort of propose, a slightly wider area in
like
that.
going on the opposite side? Because it doesn't show the sidewalk moving on the side of Starbucks.
Mhm. Yep.
So they're gonna grab more area on the other side.
And that's where the accidents are. So if you look at Washburn, it's just
Yeah,
north of this or right on
Yes.
the top side. That's where, like,
yes.
of the
yeah.
16 accidents, 11 were someone taking a left out of there.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna inject hundreds of
So it's a
new,
tough spot.
which I'm not saying that it is what it is, but that's the only concern I have. This was well put together, so
Yeah.
that was the only concern I had was, man, there'll be more accidents for sure, guaranteed.
Yeah.
It's just a question, that's life. So I don't know what that means.
What is the status of the traffic permit?
So we submitted the sections 1 through 6, which is kind of just the intro to the project. Had a scoping meeting with DOT about 2 weeks ago, and then we're preparing some response to their comments, which is basically the left turn lane. And whether we need to widen the road, it's not looking like we're gonna have to widen the road at all to fit that 12-foot left turn lane in there now. So then, once we respond to comments, that'll be reviewed and hopefully approved by DOT.
Because we heard two different things. You were saying, Isabel, it looked like they had to widen the road. You just said, it looks like we don't need to widen the road.
Well, it's up to DOT kind of to determine what
But-
is gonna be needed, where the B&L is kind of handling the process with DOT, but if there is any widening, it's gonna be minor because it's fairly wide there and
Yep.
We only just, within the last, again, 2 weeks since the scoping meeting, provided the Route 2 conceptual drawings to their team. So,
Happened.
So will the left turn lane, will that be concurrent with this project or before? When would they make those improvements?
so I had
No.
in my suggested condition said prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I thought of is you could, just like, you could say right turn only out of there, but then no one follows it.
yeah, or they go up the road and just make a
Exactly.
U-turn.
So it might make it worse, so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be a proponent of that either, so.
It was interesting because the planning board members that have been on the board for a while, but you remember this site was like an Orchard Trails expansion that we approved this. As
Well,
a
that's where that was
whole-
gonna go, and they never built it.
whole different project than this, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do see you've added spurs because I think I don't know if that's the approximate location of where that through road was gonna be, because they
Yeah.
did have a connection from Orchard Trails Drive to Washburn in the past. It's kind of looks like it's about the same spot, but
It wasn't that to go all the way to Colburn Drive
or
eventually?
maybe it's Colburn. Yeah,
Colburn,
it's Colburn that
Washburn,
was getting-
between Washburn and Colburn.
Yeah, yep, you're right. I had my roads mixed up. So you've got spurs, and I saw that they didn't extend, but your condition says if another project comes through, they're gonna determine where that connection would be.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
condition is really just to sort of set expectations from the town's perspective. Yeah.
Good, good. I saw that. Jeez. I didn't have a lot. Other questions from the board?
Maybe the traffic won't be, I don't, every coffee shop has their favorite customers. There's Aroma Joe's and Dunkin' Donuts and then Starbucks. So will it be a combination of all those customers, or do you think you generate an entire new base of customers? I know Starbucks does well on campus in the student union. So
Yeah.
it's,
I don't know, there's no shortage of coffee drinkers, I don't think. so.
because I mean, there's just so many people here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know, where would the additional traffic come from? It has to come from the other two competitors,
Yeah,
probably.
that could be. Yeah, people coming from out of town to go to Starbucks.
Come off the interstate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions before I open it up?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I mean,
Please.
I don't see why we need a Starbucks, but
Yeah. Yeah. We'll find out. All right, I'm gonna open up the public hearing. Please I invite you to step up to the mic and tell us who you are and what your concerns or comments might be.
So I do have one person online.
All right, let's hear it.
Karen, I see your hand raised. You'll have to unmute yourself to participate.
Hello, can you hear me?
You're quite quiet. If you could
bit
speak
loud.
up, that would be great.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I had really two concerns. The one is, which wasn't addressed in the presentation, on noise. The noise from the speaker of the drive-through. My house is 144 Park Street. And to the left of us is OHOP. And we hear their loud music and late into the night. And now we're going to have a fast food place to our right with a speaker that we're going to hear, order taking all day long. So what are any plans at all to limit the noise pollution that residents in the immediate area will experience? That's my first
Where is the order-
question.
Where is the order taking? Like, I don't see in the plan. That's where they get their.
Well, there's it's right there. Yeah. it's there.
So it's to the side here, not at the far back?
No, I saw it on the one
So
of the
you're-
plans, yeah.
Yep.
Over there. So if you could address that, because, one of the things that it's fairly common, I think with the Dunkin' Donuts on Stillwater Ave, ages ago, we requested screening, buffering, so this is a noise issue. We're pretty consistent about trying to protect neighboring, residences about that. So could you address that? And how you might be able to muffle that so that the neighbors don't have to
Yeah.
be impacted?
I guess I would kind of point to just like there's definitely an existing pretty dense tree line to the north, which would probably be the nearest affected abutter there would be the one to the north, and then the menu board is pretty far internal to the site there. So that's where the noise would be coming from. So I would say that you're definitely gonna get natural buffering with that vegetated area right there.
So you can 100% guarantee we won't hear that at our house. That was one of my concerns. The other concern is, of course, the heavy traffic. If you've ever, I don't know if anyone there lives on Park Street, getting out of your driveway is very hazardous, certain times of the day. Particularly where our house is, because we also get the traffic from Washburn Place, that's making lefts mainly to get to a lot of the students are there, so they're trying to get to school. So when they see a break in the southbound Park Street traffic, they try to quickly make their lefts when we're trying to make a right out because there's a break as well. We're trying to get the same break in traffic so we can turn. I've noticed, especially our house, not just our house, but the neighbor right across from us. There's been times where I've seen almost missed like collisions there because the traffic is there's just so much of it. And this happens a few points during the day, but it's worse in the morning and worse in the evening. I'm not sure if a left turn lane in the southbound Route 2 Park Street would help to eliminate any problems with the traffic because it could possibly cause a backup if there's too much traffic in that left turn lane. And then the southbound would be backed up. It's already treacherous trying to make a left. I mean, sometimes we have to make a right if we can to go down to the circle and go all the way around just so we can go north on 2. So we are a little concerned about additional traffic being in the area.
Yeah, that's a great point, Karen. I mean, that's the whole reason I think for that Route 2 corridor study. It's a difficult area, and with all of the student housing complexes that have gone in, all the development up Route 2, we've had these discussions over the years many times trying to deal with that. So I don't know if Mitch, anybody, or Isabel, if you want to discuss that. I mean, that's off-site traffic, so not necessarily attributed to this project, but if this compounds that, anybody want to comment from the town perspective of any other items that might inform Karen?
I think we had already talked about the Route 2 project that the town is undertaking. You know, there was mentioned previously that this might be a project that either doesn't happen or takes multiple years to happen. The good news is that at least with this section of roadway, given the local condition here, is that at least that left turn lane would be addressed in a more timely fashion than everything else. I mean, I think I would just agree with what you said. This is a known issue that there have been numerous studies going back to the recommendation for initial studies in 2014 comp plan, the 2018 Park Street traffic study. I think this is something that we're generally aware of, and this project actually provides sort of a more timely opportunity to address some of those things.
I would like to follow up on just the noise issue. So, you know, we've had discussions with other applicants. If you know there's a known issue, this happened just recently. So we approved the Bangor gas. There was a utility station recently, and the applicant understood because they're abutting a neighborhood, and the discussion was made at the time that if you're creating noise issues, there might not be any now, but if there are some in the future, and the neighbors of this project are hearing that speaker, that perhaps you might be amenable to including something at a later date. Perhaps it's fine now, but you know, again, you're putting a Starbucks near some residential area, and that's something that, you know, we've been able to work this out before, not necessarily forcing you to do something now, but to understand that and to be good neighbors and to know that if something, you know, might be required in the future, that's an option. So we've used that kind of approach in the past. Does that seem reasonable? They mentioned the, you know, the densely, you know, the forested area to the north of that, the exit lane. And yes, the drive-through board or the, you know, the speaker board is farther in. I'm not sure that anything additional would be that we have to include that now, but I want to get your thoughts on that, because we typically address these things.
Do we have like an estimate of how loud, like how many decibels the speaker is going to be? I know the ones in Bangor are not particularly loud, and you can sometimes not hear them very well even when you're there. I don't know if that's because of their ordinance or because of their older signage boards. I don't know, but do we have?
I don't have it with me, but that's definitely something that we could provide.
If I could interrupt.
Please.
So I did want to just note, your comments and your questions sort of triggered me wanting to point out condition number 5, which is one of our standard conditions with regards to noise. That section, chapter 13, article 2, noise control, puts some decibel limitation levels on what can be heard from the property line. So if, for example, the abutter, I guess I would say directly to the north of this parcel, is hearing some significant noise, that can always be addressed through a complaint to the code enforcement officer. And that would be addressed through that chapter 13, with, you know, the code enforcement officer potentially requiring on the ground mitigation such as buffering.
Did you catch that, Karen?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Does that seem reasonable if it's already one of the standard conditions? You okay with that? Okay. Other comments from the public? Yep, please.
Ann Ross, and I do own a piece of property on Park Street. It's adjacent to the bank, the big white house. And I share the concerns of the left-hand turns because, I mean, that's a known, everybody understands that, but it would be nice to have a way of looking at consolidating the egresses. I really appreciate that you've taken the time to have the availability to come onto that Orchard Trails entranceway. But we still have, we have the people coming from Alewives that jump over the Meridian to take a left-hand turn. We've got the left-hand turn from OT, and anybody who has taken the bus to campus waits and waits and waits to make that left-hand turn to get onto Park Street. So then you've got Washburn and now this. So that's concerning as to how we can maybe look at consolidating, perhaps bringing something that comes through to access the roundabout. Or turning right and then turning around up ahead is, you know, there's going to be a long way to go down to the last little roundy that's been proposed. But just that concern of the left-hand turns, whether it's a left onto Park Street or a left to get onto that. And I am a firm believer that this Starbucks is going to be heavily utilized because there are just people that are so excited to have Starbucks coming into Orono, you know, and take the load off of what's out on campus, which is a cluster. If anybody's ever tried to do that, get to that Starbucks on campus. The other concern is lighting and safety. So I'm assuming that you're going to have lights going into that entrance, but even regardless of whether this comes in fairly soon, lighting that section, it needs to happen. There are students that are walking. They're just open targets for drivers at night. It's a concern. It's a concern, the arrows of on that coming out of the roundy. Which lane am I going to go in as I come out of that roundy? Am I to go straight? Do I stay in this lane to go to Orchard Trails? It's very confusing. So I think addressing better signage prior to the roundy and then better arrows as to what lane you're going to be coming out of that as we approach coming into the Starbucks. So for me, it's lighting. That crosswalk, I walk to the bank on a regular basis, and I do this every time because sometimes those lights don't work. The blinking lights, they don't. And I report it. But I think we would need to have another pedestrian crosswalk that has those lights up above and really look at the pedestrian safety in that section beyond the roundabout, going up to where you have that, so that all of those places, OHOP, Starbucks, what else is up there? The grocery store, the local, thank you, Donut Grove, but they're not opened at night. So, but that, I think that's something that we all need to look at and consider as we're trying to develop this corridor, in addition to the driveway, that proposed Route 2 revision. That's all I have.
Thank you. So do you want to just address and confirm pedestrian safety? And I know you're replacing, well, the curb cut, you're going to remove the existing one, continue the sidewalk, but you just want to address lighting and safety just on the part of that she addressed, that the part that you can control.
Yeah, so as far as site lighting, we're providing that, you know, within the ordinance and providing lighting within our parcel. Sounded like she was more referring to the right of way, which we don't have any lighting proposed. I will say the TMP looks at multimodal transportation, so that includes pedestrian and bicycle transportation as well. We're providing kind of that a sidewalk connection to Park Street. But yeah. So
Isabel, is there any pedestrian safety? We heard about the driver part of it with the left turn, the proposed left turn. Is there any new pedestrian safety as part of, well, that part of getting around town?
Could you continue your discussion for a moment and I will pull up the concept plans that I can
right.
share for this section.
So talk amongst yourselves. Yeah. Any other comments while she's doing that?
Karen earlier online mentioned the left-hand turn, and I get what she's saying. It's a great concept, having that center lane left-hand turn for doing left and right.
Yeah.
But you can only put so many people in that left-hand turn.
Right.
Because then you got to get out of it.
Yeah.
You have to either turn, hope for the right lane to open,
Mhm.
or that you're gonna make your left-hand turn at some point. You can only stack so many people up in that center lane.
Right. So some of this, again, I'm just trying to, weigh the project that's in front of us. They can only control so much with an issue that the town has to address as part of the bigger picture with a Route 2 corridor study, because as Judd said, there's gonna be more accidents. We listened to Karen, and again, coming out of Washburn, that conflict there, there's just some hot spots that are just ripe for potential accidents, so.
Since we're just killing
Yeah.
time, it's that poor
know.
person on the front of the line
But
trying to
we've
make it
got
out.
our town management
They've
and
got all that
council
pressure.
chair sitting in the back, listening to this, hearing more public comments about both traffic and pedestrian safety, so,
And I'll just add, I mean, what do you want Orono to look like? We have a Roma Joe's there already. We got Dunkin' Donuts everywhere. I don't know.
Yep.
Not appealing to me.
all right, you got it.
All right, so this top part that you're seeing here is one of the alternatives or the alternative for this section of Park Street that was sort of how do I word this? Given the light blessing by council, we have not committed to funding any project. We have not fully engineered drawings, but this is a conceptual drawing that we have provided to the applicants for this purpose. So you can see that there's a crosswalk being proposed at Orchard Trails Drive. I'm not sure if that's currently existing. This curb cut where my cursor is the approximate location of their new curb cut. It might be slightly further over, but it's about this location. They're not moving it too much. This is that single family home that's currently existing on the site. So you can see that again, there's a 12-foot turn lane and some pedestrian proposals further up closer to Washburn, although that's not fully part of this project.
Is that a new crosswalk, or did you address that to the north? Yeah. Yeah, on both sides.
Yep.
Hmm.
And again, I think this requires some very slight road widening. I'm not 100% certain of that, but this has been provided to the applicants for this section sort of closer to Orchard Trails Drive.
Do you have anything to add?
You got me the third time you brought up the Route 2 project again, so I figured you deserved at least in the public some comment. Yes, Route 2's been given the light dressing approval of the council. It's going through a multi-year phase at the DOT, but obviously any decisions you do here will be taken into account in the future decisions of what we implement. Putting in what we've recommended as the current plan for that area with that left turn lane is the best solution available now, and it's a nice first step towards having it. I think it's been alluded to as well as some of the long-term additional connections that would allow it to continue back in behind may open up other opportunities with the roundabout down the road. And I think you also have to give some driver selection. A person coming out of there that can take a right and find an alternative route, or a person coming down through that doesn't want to do a left, even though the outgoing traffic's lower in the morning and lower in the evenings, may choose to go to the roundabout just to make the turn and come back and do a right turn in. It's gonna, and a lot of this, that's a part of what happens with roundabouts when you're installing them, is that people have to relearn their traffic habits and relearn different ways to use it. So it may or may not result, but again, that's why we have the traffic engineers that have done the work with us. I would love to tell you this is exactly what's being built, but until we go through the entire process with MDOT, this is the best version of what we've seen for the town. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
All right, further comments from the public? Last call. Anybody online?
I have nobody with their hands raised online.
All right. It's a public hearing. Last comments, further discussion. Think we've addressed concerns. Again, I think the noise issue that we heard, that was the primary complaint, seems to be able to be addressed at a later date. Ongoing issues for, considerations for pedestrian safety and just ongoing studies and hopefully improve pedestrian and vehicular traffic patterns will to be determined. Any other? All right, I think we have no waivers. That's good. Yeah, geez, I think we're ready for a motion. Who wants it? Shy.
I mean, I'll do it if, you want,
Got it.
you want to do it?
Mike, you ready?
Looking for it. I can, there we go.
I move to approve the site plan application of Beacon Orchard Trails to Limited Liability Corporation, authorized agent Acorn Engineering Incorporated, revised through January 3rd of 2025 to whoops,
Sorry.
I don't have to say to construct a new 2,650 square foot drive-through restaurant with associated site improvements, which include parking, landscaping, and driveways at 111 Park Street, which is at tax map 20-1 lot 42, per the findings of facts and conditions of the approval dated the January 15th of 2025.
Great, and as Isabel said before, all these conditions are part of that motion. So, and we don't have any additional conditions. So I have a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
Very good. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? All right. We're good to go. Next up. Find my sheet. Old business, proposed amendment to the planning board's bylaws. Remember, this is to add a requirement that the applicant or the duly authorized representative is present for all planning board meetings on their item, is initially discussed at the December 18th, 2024 meeting. I do want to expedite this. It's getting late. We could not review this at our last meeting because you said we needed to vote on it at the next meeting. So I don't expect much discussion on this. So I think we've reviewed this quite a bit. It was a simple change. We talked about it last time.
Need a motion?
Yeah, I need a motion unless there's, well, we can get discussion. I'll take a motion.
I move that we approve the proposed amendment of the planning board's bylaws for section 18-42 B7 to add a requirement that the applicant or their duly authorized representative is present for all planning board meetings or their item as initially discussed at the December 18th, 2024 meeting.
Very good. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Very good. Next up, town planner report. What do we got on tap? Isabel?
I don't have any applications on tap currently. I will be in touch if we can cancel our meeting.
Yeah, I think I'm not here that week anyway.
I'm not, that's school vacation.
Yeah, school
week,
vacation.
so I'll
Oh,
go
okay.
Too. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't
Push
have
it on,
anything
yeah.
right now, but I will be in touch within the next week or so when we would need to typically send out notices if I don't get anything.
Sounds good. Great. Next up is adjournment. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
What would you discuss about adjournment?
That's a good question.